Welcome, everybody. I'm here with my friend Shivani, who's all the way in her tent house in Kenya, which I think is so exciting. And we're, first of all, humanizing ourselves and talking about the fact that we are slightly technologically challenged. And we have had trouble with report app. And today, just trying to get us in the same room. Hey, Manju. Hi, guys. Welcome. All right, it's 5 o'clock. I'm gonna, people are gonna roll in, but I'm gonna kickstart because we have an action-packed half hour, right, Shivani?
We have so much to cover. I'm so excited. Let's get going.
All right, so just welcome everyone. My name, as some of you might know, is Asha and I have here with me Dr. Shivani, who's down there on the bottom of the screen, who is here with us and going to share some of her amazing experiences with lion conservation. So she's a lion conservationist in Kenya. She's the founder of Ewaso Lions. So do follow her on that page. And her thing is really about bringing community and really creating heroes out of local people in this conservation space, which I think is phenomenal. And I was really excited to have her here. We chat a lot, and the other day she was like, we should do something together. And then yesterday I was like, why don't we do an Earth Day chat? And this basically, when you guys found out about it, was
literally the same minute.
And I mean, I think it's exciting because we both work on, species that people hear about a lot. People have misconceptions about those species and working with them, which I'd love to, talk a little bit about. But also, they're totally different ecosystems, which I think is cool. We tend to talk within our spaces. Like most of the ocean people, perhaps you talk to mostly terrestrial people, Shivani?
Absolutely, and I'm petrified of the ocean. I can barely swim, so yeah, definitely. I'm a terrestrial person.
Well, we might have to change that for you. But I'll come out to see my boat that I don't own. But all right, so let's get started on this. I guess my first question is for 1 second. My mom's having technical difficulties. I can't see you. Yeah. Okay, sweet. If you think we have technological challenge, my mother's more technological challenge, so that's good perspective. Sorry, everybody. But welcome to everyone who's still rolling in. So we're just going to kickstart our chat. We don't have a lot of time, but I guess the first thing, I'm really curious, Shivani, like, what made you start working with lions? I mean, is there a moment or something that you can tell us about?
So I think for me, it was a childhood passion and dream of mine. I was only 8 years old. I was on safari with my parents, and I saw not my first lion, but I saw my first cheetah, and I was absolutely obsessed. And I kept saying, one day I'm going to run around and look for cheetahs and protect them, and I'll be in a Land Rover, and that's all I'm going to do. And then over time, my passion became for not just cheetahs, but the big cats. And then in 2002, I moved up here to Samburu in northern Kenya and realized very quickly that lions are in trouble, that no one had done any lion work here. And that was the beginning. Literally, there was such a need to understand this lion population. And I think what got me so excited is I wasn't seeing prides of lions that I used to see when I was a child growing up. I used to see solitary lions. And I thought, something's unusual up here in Samburu. I really want to understand what is happening to this lion population. So that was it. That was the beginning, 2002, when I first moved up to Samburu. What about you, Asha? How did it begin for you? How did whales come into your life?
Yeah, so the cool thing is that your sort of adventure started at 8, and it started to form at that age. And I always say that mine started about the age of 6. So it's interesting to see that kind of comparison, I can't say that whales were in my life because I don't think we didn't just roll out of our boats, houses into boats, right? I didn't actually see my first whale after my first degree, so I was like 22 years old. But I think it was that sense of, that adventure, that, National Geographic magazines and people doing things and seeing things that people wouldn't see and going places no one else would ever go. And I think that stuff was really like what blew my mind, and just the idea of becoming an adventurous scientist. And then I fell in love with, And yeah, like my specific moment when I really like launched my project, which was 2008. So yours is 2002, 2008, very similar timelines. Um, was when I had an encounter with an aggregation of blue whales and a floating pile of whale poop.
Wow, you got to tell me more there. I think we got to hear more about that.
Well, story that people are often curious about, because I have this great passion for whale poop, and I think you know that. But it does come from
Yeah.
the fact that I saw this whale poop, I saw this aggregation of blue whales, and everything I'd learned in my undergrad and my textbook said that an aggregation only happens if they're basically in warm waters, if they're mating or having babies. And so I insisted on this research vessel that we got. And when we got there, they weren't. There was definitely no mating. I know what I'd look for if it was me, if there was and there were no babies being born. Hello, welcome back.
Hi. Okay. Are we back? Can you hear
Where did I
me?
get cut out? I can hear you fine.
You were talking about the mating, and then it suddenly got cut off around there.
Okay, I said mating twice, so I don't know where that was. But just to say, everybody thought that if blue whales came to the waters around Sri Lanka, they'd be mating or having babies. And basically, when I saw the poop, I realized that they were actually feeding, because poop is a sign of feeding, and that they actually had adapted to feed in these warm tropical waters, which we weren't expecting, because whales normally go to cold places. So anyway,
Wow.
yeah, so that was kind of like my eureka moment. Just to tell people, we will take some questions at the end, so I will scroll through and try to grab them. But yeah, and you know what, Shivani, what I'm really excited about. So now you started your journey, and obviously you were very committed, and you followed this. What's it like to work with lions, and like what kind of misconceptions, do people have about what it look like?
So a lot of people think I'm on safari all day. They think I see lions every single day, and all I do is drive around, and it's one big safari. I actually haven't seen a lion this year. It's the honest truth. I have not seen. And it's hard. It's absolutely hard work finding lions, because most of them are very nervous. They're scared. You might see tracks, you might hear them at night, but actually seeing them, it's really not easy. So this is where I have a team of amazing community members, warriors, who are out on foot actually looking for the lions, because it's just not as easy as people think it is. In some places, in southern Kenya, you go to Masai Mara, which is so famous. Everyone's heard of Masai Mara. And yeah, you might see 20, 30 lions just sleeping on the road there. I have never seen that up here. I wish I would. But it just shows that lions here are struggling. They're really finding ways to survive. And the best way they've figured out to survive is by hiding. They come out only at night. They're spending a lot of time during the day hidden in thick bushes. So it's not easy to find them. So I wish I was on a big safari all day, every day, but I'm really not. And I think if I was on a safari all day seeing lions, then I wouldn't be doing conservation. I think that's just a big safari. Conservation is tough. It's about trying to understand, what do lions need in order to survive,
Yeah.
figuring out how to make it easier for them, working with communities, working to protect habitat for lions. That's what we're spending our time on, not driving around looking for lions, on a safari. So I think that's one of the biggest questions I always get is, oh, but it's so much fun for you. You just drive around all day. It's a lot more than that. And yeah, it's a lot more difficult. But I'm sure it's the same for you. I mean, I'm sure all you do is sit on a boat in your bikini, right? That's all you do. And you just see whales every day just coming up to the boat.
Oh my, oh, spot on. I tell you, everybody thinks that my life is this glamorous thing where way around, I'm in my bikini on a cocktail. And really not any of the above, right? Like, it's grubby, it's dirty hours. Like, we work with elusive beasts, right? At the end of the day, yeah, they've captured the hearts and minds of people, but that doesn't mean that they just turn up every time we get out there. And some days, like 8 hours just staring at the ocean. And what I think interesting is that, yeah, exactly. And with, I know it's rare like you might see tracks rarely, or maybe scat samples maybe you can use sometimes to track lions. I don't know, but I feel like terrestrially there may be some ocean we don't even really have that, and it's it's just a totally different ecosystem. An animal just dissolves immediately, or there's marks to follow. So we have
Right.
people underestimate just how much patience and how much hard work the kind of conservation really is. And I think that oh yeah, can you guys not hear me properly? Conversations. Sorry, Shivani, your tent internet is clearly better than my house internet.
I know. Isn't that crazy that I have better connection in northern Kenya in the middle of nowhere? But you're very clear now.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you guys for being so kind and patient. Okay, so we have, I mean, I think that's great. I think that's one of the other things we wanted to make sure people realized was that conservation misconceptions are quite a big part of what we do. And we battle that, with mostly by just looking as grubby as we do at the end of a field day and making sure people see that. I mean, I don't have any bikini posts on my Instagram for obvious reason. There's like no time in my life where that is a practical piece of clothing for the kind of work we do, right? Like, I'm just saying. So, but it's fun to hear like what it's like with the kind of work you do and how people perceive what you do. So yeah, I mean, that idea that also that lions are elusive. I think we watch documentaries and perhaps people get carried away with the thought that you just roll out and there's a lion. I mean, do you feel like that's how people see it?
Definitely. I mean, I think documentaries play a big part in this. There's so much that's filmed in certain areas where you see big prides of lions. You see them sort of hanging out, habituated. But the reality is there's very few places like that left for lions. Most of the lions are really struggling to survive. Habitat is such a big problem for them. Their space is disappearing so quickly. The amount of food available for them is disappearing. And, now with more development, more large-scale infrastructure that's coming in, it's just taking away more and more land away from not just lions, but all wildlife. So it's definitely becoming harder. And, in a way, this should be captured, this more solitary side of lions. It's a social cat, or it's known as a social cat. But our lions here are not social at all. They're hanging out alone. They hunt alone. They raise their cubs alone. It's completely different to what people see on TV. And I think this is now the new norm. It's the new norm for lions because they just have to work out a way of survival, and it's different than what it used to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's interesting because I think, the ocean is vast. It's 70% of our planet. And I think people forget that as gigantic as blue whales are, I mean, the largest animal that's ever roamed the planet, they're still tiny relative to the ocean, right? So finding one is actually kind of a miracle. And I like people to keep that in mind, even when they go watching. I mean, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm going to go whale watching. What are the chances I'm going to see a blue whale, right? And from where I sit, I'm like, nature has no guarantees. And that, to me, like you say, that's part of the beauty of the work we do is that we don't see them every day, that they're not just so easily accessible, that we have to work to kind of do what we do, because I think there's a greater appreciation. And, I think I'm grateful for the moments then when I do get to work with them.
Definitely. I think every time I see a lion, I feel like it's my first time, because it's not every day that I see them. And so you get that moment where you sort of go, oh, and that's how I feel every time I see a lion, because it's so special to see them, especially lions that live outside protected areas, to see them living out alongside communities and alongside people and villages. You just know that, wow, this is a real survivor, and I'm so lucky to be in this area watching it. And I think I never take that for granted because it's so special.
Yeah, and that's such a nice thing that, that sense of your passion is so deep that every animal brings that excitement and joy. And it's funny because I've been on whale watch operations in other parts of the world where I've seen a whale and then I've gone nuts on the boat, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a whale. And I'm like so excited. And then the tourists turn to me and they're like, wow, is this your first time seeing a whale? And I'm like, no, this is my job. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, but it's just, the minute you see this giant, just like you, I think, wow, like, this animal is the largest that's ever lived, or it's, you know, it's a some kind of whale, and you think it's so beautifully designed to survive these environments. It's so, you know, it does X, Y, and Z. It survives. We see 20% of that. I mean, there's so many things that make you like bubble up with that excitement, and I think that's cool.
Definitely.
Yeah,
It's what keeps us going. It's what gives us hope. Seeing a lion is a sign of hope for me. It's like, well, it's here. It's alive. It's not being shot. It's not persecuted. It's alive and it's surviving and it's got cubs. And that for me gives me so much hope. It really does. Especially considering the threats keep increasing. When you actually see that lion, it means so much.
So talking about threats, what kind of threats do you see? What are the predominant threats for your lions out there?
So it used to be retaliatory killing. So every time lions preyed on livestock belonging to the local communities, so every time they killed camels or cows or donkeys, often the communities, understandably out of anger and resentment for losing their livelihood, would go out and shoot the lions. So we addressed this issue by bringing in young Samburu warriors, young men, to come and keep lions alive, monitor them, keep them away from livestock, and really safeguard them. And that has really worked over the past decade. And just to give you an example, last year we had no lions killed in retaliation. But things are changing now. The threats to lions are totally different now. Now we're looking at things like diseases. We're looking at large-scale infrastructure. Just this issue of habitat and prey for lions is becoming such a big one. And I think that's now, you know, we've got to adapt. We can't keep focusing on one threat. We've addressed it. We've got to adapt. We've got to be flexible. Things change. We've got to adapt and find new ways of dealing with the new threats. So we're looking at diseases now. We're learning a lot. I mean, I've had to learn about rabies and canine distemper and the connection to domestic dogs. We're learning about that. We're working on that. We're working on infrastructure to make sure that, you know, we don't become sort of sort of being against all the development authorities. Rather than that, let's work with them. Let's say, okay, how can you do your development in a wildlife-friendly way so corridors are not blocked? How can communities not be affected? Let's actually work with you as opposed to against you. So yeah, that's kind of the new threats that we're dealing with lions at the moment. I don't know, how similar is it to whales? Like, what are the threats to whales now?
Yeah, so for us, certainly out here, the biggest threat to the blue whales are that they get hit by ships and get killed. And again, you know, it's a growing threat because, you know, 90% of everything is shipped. We're all part of the problem. There are increasingly more and more vessels on the water. And so that's a big thing that is a visible, but in some ways it's visible, but it's out of sight, out of mind because people aren't always sitting in the shipping lanes. So there's been a, you know, a bit of push and pull around like, is that really happening? How is it happening? We don't always have the carcasses as evidence as well because they'll sink. It's a challenging problem to try to address, but it's actually, if you know, we've done the science around it to show that it is a problem, and we've shown we've got solutions that can actually help to not be negative for the shipping industry as well, because we fully understand that the shipping industry is something we all depend on, but we can also work together, right? And I think that's one of the things that with everything we do, both of us, considering the stakeholders, bringing them into the conversation is so important for success, right? And you know, 99% of the work we do is people management, right? It's not management of the species. It's really managing the people and the interactions around it. I mean, we have problems with entanglement with fishing nets, but the fishing nets are out there because people want fish, right? So driven by all of us. So those are the two threats in terms of things that can kill the animals. But then you have other threats like vessels, like small boats just going and hassling. You know, in the whale watching industry, they can be quite constantly chasing after them. So there is a stress level, and we don't know the long-term impacts because whale watching is pretty new. And we also have, think about you and I, because you get in the water and you think it's so peaceful, but if you see the world through your ears, it's a bit of a problem. So but again, the common theme for the two of us is stakeholders, right? The importance of bringing people in. And that's something that I'd love to just like dive into as our maybe our final kind of question before we open up to everybody else is, how do you go about it? What do you think is a key strategy for the conservation of your lions, and what tools do you use, or what are your thoughts?
I think it's very much about inclusion. It's about bringing everyone on board. There's no way by myself I can go out there and protect lions. It's about bringing for me, it's all about the community. This is their land. These are their lions. And by bringing them on board, empowering them to invest in lion conservation and generally in conservation as a whole is what has made a big difference for us. Ewaso Lions is not me. I might have started it 10 years ago, but it's very much an entire team. And what's great is we can see conservation has almost become a way of life for the communities here. And I think that's been our biggest strength, and it's been the first tool we've ever used. And it's about bringing the warriors on board, bringing the women on board. We have a great Mama Simba program. And children. I mean, often, we call children the next generation of conservationists, but I believe they're new generation. They can be conservationists today. And I think really getting them excited about lions, most of them have never seen a lion. They live right here. They hear lions at night. They see tracks of lions, but they've never actually seen one. They only see the negative side of lions. And I think this is where we should bring lions to communities in a much more positive way. So we do that through the work with the children, through the warriors, through the women. And then you mentioned stakeholders. We cannot do this alone. As one little project in northern Kenya, it's not possible. Collaboration is so key. And we're so privileged and lucky to work with amazing partners in this region like the Grevi Zebra Trust, who have the same values as us and who are all about working with communities. I think this is so important that we work together. We work as a team. And I think that's what makes a big difference. Bring everyone on board as opposed to trying to do things in isolation. And I know so much, I mean, I follow your marine conversations and with your students. I mean, it's inspiring what you do with them. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I think we want to steal your idea.
Yeah, please take it. So, I mean, we do, we have the same sort of value system when it comes to conservation. It's inclusion, right? I fight for inclusion at every level. At the global level, I'm always shouting about the fact that 70% of our coastlines are in the developing world, but really representation from our parts of the world is negligible, right? We've never been part of the conversation. Decisions are made at the top, and then blanket decisions are thrown at everybody, and it's supposed to work, which it doesn't. We know that in our different, that you have a lion population that's very elusive. There are other places where they're not as elusive, right? So you have to address the problems in those spaces, right? And so for me, it's been a big drive about that and trying to get more, people from the, as I would say, the developing world involved, and let them know that they have a powerful voice and a huge role to play. And my tagline is, every coastline needs a local hero. And I genuinely believe in that. So a lot of my time is invested in sort of sharing a lot of the knowledge. I try to bring people into the research, but I also just like spew knowledge everywhere. That's kind of my thing. Whatever I learn, I want to pass it on, because when I die, I don't want it to end, right? Like that's my thing that drives me.
Absolutely.
And so one of the initiatives, just like you brought up, is Marine Conservation Conversations. And it's basically a science journal club for the public. People in this room right now who have attended. And what we do is people register. We send out a paper that I think is interesting. It addresses a marine conservation problem. It's a well-written paper, because there's so many that are terrible out there. And then we come together normally when we're not under these conditions in a space, and we share cake and we break it down together, and it's been a huge thing for me, because I've had to think about the terms I take for granted and sort of like, how do I make sure you can hear me, right? I've kind of so, okay. Hello. We've got Oxford Zoology here with us, which is cool since we both have like different degrees. I'm kind of stoked.
I know.
But sorry.
I know. Hi, Oxford. It's very exciting.
Hi, everybody. So, just to wrap up, we create a lot of opportunities for just anybody and everybody. Right now, we're doing a 5-week, 10-episode thing called Ocean Creature Feature, where we do a little video and a resource pack for kids to get excited about the weird creatures in our oceans. And it's been, kids have loved it, adults have loved it. So I think it's pretty simple.
That's amazing.
And I think, it's just, you just have to want to share. And I think then you can do it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. share
And
amongst cake. I mean, what
yeah,
could be
I
better
was
than
gonna
that?
say, I mean, I think people who know me, who've been for my sessions, know I love cake. But guys, here's a dirty little secret. Shivani and I both love cake. It's a little bit weird, but we really bonded on the fact that we both have this absurd love for cake. So
The
sorry.
difference the difference is Asha at least gets to eat cake often. I rarely get to eat it, so I have to live through her. She keeps sending me pictures of cake, and it's so unfair because I don't have any.
Sorry, but I enjoy it for you. All right, but it's been super fun, like, to have this conversation. But how about we open it up to? I
Yeah.
definitely love cake. Open it up to the floor. Anybody who has questions. I know you guys had questions coming in, and I'm really sorry because we keep getting cut out. But if you want to chuck them on here, to address either one of us or both of us, we'd be happy to answer. So, anybody curious? Any questions? Any thoughts? I think there was a question, Shivani, about what diseases you see with your lions. I saw that earlier. Any particular diseases?
Yeah, no, I remember seeing that question. That's a great question. We generally see diseases in the large carnivores that are at least are a little bit known. So we've seen rabies in hyenas, we've seen canine distemper in the endangered wild dogs. And that's a huge concern because wild dogs are critically endangered. There's very few left. We only have a couple of packs here, and they were all killed. They all died as a result of distemper a few years ago. So these are diseases that lions could have. So we're trying to address the disease issue and the spread from domestic dogs to wildlife. It is a concern for sure, and it seems to be a new threat. And there's still a lot more that needs to be known about it, especially on distemper. Rabies is a little bit more known, but not as much on distemper. And we're just, especially us as a project, we're just really trying to learn as much as we can, as quick as possible, because rabies and distemper are out there. And, rabies is a zoonotic disease. So if a hyena with rabies bites a human, that's a severe problem. And if the person doesn't get treatment, they will die. So these are serious diseases now that we have to address.
Interesting. I'm going to take the next question, which is what are the ways to reduce whales being struck on shipping lanes? So that's a great question, Rumandi. So the work that we've done, and actually just, across the world, this is a problem that's been a growing problem. When the shipping lanes were originally laid out, we didn't really know that much about what was out there and how important certain parts of our ocean were. And as our knowledge has grown, I think we have to also adapt, right? And in some parts of the world, they've shifted shipping lanes offshore out of important areas for the whales, so that there's no, interactions as often. Certainly also in some places, they've slowed down speeds in particular areas because below a certain speed, the animal is thought to have enough time to get out of the way. And those are some of the recommendations we've put forward, also here in Sri Lanka, to try to resolve this problem, because right now the ships are going through kind of the kitchen of the whales, really productive areas. So, it's not an option to chase the whales out, but it is an option for us to be more considerate. And 90% of the vessels that are using those areas in Sri Lanka actually bypassing the country. So they're not stopping in the country, so they can move a little bit offshore. It doesn't have a huge impact on their the economics of travel also. And we've had these conversations with shipping industry. We're sort of working with the government now to try to, obviously not now, but to try to kind of push that a little bit more. Conservation is complicated, but it's not impossible, is what I think is the thing. So
Sure.
Norina Whaler, sorry if I'm pronouncing these things wrong. Where else, this is for you, Shivani, because it's lions. Where else in Africa do you find solitary lions?
Hi, Norina. She's from Germany. Very excited that she's joined this call. So Namibia is known to have solitary lions as well. And I think as more and more threats increase that lions face, now there are more areas, especially smaller areas, which have so much pressure on them that the populations have become solitary. So I think it's from, the few populations that are left in West Africa. Namibia definitely has solitary lions. Northern Kenya is all about solitary lions. So I think now we're seeing more and more of that. I think, 50 years ago, I'm sure there were large prides of lions here. But as the threats change, as the challenges increase, lions adapt to become more solitary because that's a better way for them to survive.
Mm. And also, it's a great question. What motivates you to be on the job? Maybe you can answer that and I'll take it after you. So what motivates you?
Wow. So what motivates me? For me, I mean, I've wanted to do this since I was a kid. For me, it's all about being out here, living in my tent in the middle of nowhere. I love being in the bush. For me, it's just been that childhood obsession. What keeps me going during really difficult days, and trust me, there's so many difficult days where you wake up and you think, how on earth do I keep going today? Someone might have just killed a lion. There's a disease outbreak. There's locusts heading our way. There's flooding. I mean, the challenges are insane. What keeps me motivated is my team. I have the most amazing Ewaso Lions team. They are so passionate. They are so dedicated. They risk their lives every single day. And we sometimes argue about how much I'm like, Jennaria, you can't go do that. And he says to me, I will save that lion. And they just, these guys inspire me and motivate me every day. So I have a great team in Nairobi who keep the project going from, the what is it called? The operations side. It's so important to have a strong operations unit. And then the most amazing dedicated team in the field. That's what motivates me every day. It really does. I'm very lucky. What about you? Tell me what keeps you going other than cake. What
that's
motivates
awesome, and I
you
think
other
that's
than cake?
really positive.
Your daily cake dose.
Just dangle the cake in front of me and I'll do anything.
Just dangle cake.
Not really, guys. No, not true. So for me, I'm also, I've grown up just wanting to do this, and my dreams, obviously, they grew and they got better molded, and I found my path. And I just, I am so inspired by just this planet and what amazing things I've seen. The fact that the oceans keep giving. These creatures keep doing what they do despite everything we do. I'm incredibly humbled by that, actually. And I feel, for me, I think, if I don't do my part right now, I'm sure I will regret it. And I'm so inspired also by all the people, young people, old people who had, feel that they also have a role to play and want to try. The ocean heroes, as I call them, and that, they come from different backgrounds, different places, different whatever, but they have this commitment to the ocean, and I see it. I get messages from people that are really kind, and they just really fuel me. And as I always say, it's like people will tell me I inspire them, but I say, what matters is what you do with that inspiration. And then you have the potential to inspire one other person. And I think that cycle of inspiration is such a powerful thing also. So, yeah, I mean, I love what I do. Oh, gosh, I just feel so privileged to live this life. So, yeah.
I think so. And I think
sorry.
Just to add to that, I think we have a responsibility. For me as a Kenyan, this is ours to protect. And I think it's so important that we communicate that message to everyone. It's not something for someone else to come and do for us. I'm Kenyan. This is my country. Get on with it. And I think responsibility, I feel that real sense of duty and responsibility for my country. And I've heard you speak about that I think that's something we really have in common as well. Yeah. I think that sort of sense of duty for Sri Lanka, that sense of duty for Kenya. So I think that's also a huge motivating factor. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think it's absolutely right. I'm so, my dream is that, I mean, globally, I say my dream is that I want everyone to gossip about the oceans every day, and not these celebrities we gossip about, but I want the ocean to be part of everyone's conversation every day. And I want more local people to be involved and feel like they have a role, that they're not just part of the problem. Right. And I think that's been an issue for so long, where, people pointed at people like, Sri Lankans or, our parts of it, said, oh, you know what, you're destroying this, you're doing this. And they've popped into our countries and done what they want and left, and we want to change. You know what, we can, and grow and do what we do, and we will show the world. And I think that's what we both, we're so passionate about that, which is cool. But so Astrid's got a question. Any advice of funding sources for research NGOs like the ones you guys? So from my part, just briefly, it's just a patchwork quilt, basically. my funds are, either donors or a combination, really, donors, private sector partnerships, and conservation grants. And then, a lot of my own funding, I kind of try to, my own salary, I try to get from doing other work, so that I'm not a burden on the our small budgets right now that we have for the organization. So yeah, so it's a real patchwork quilt, but building those relationships long term. And I know Shivani's had particularly good, sort of long term donors that I think have been really valuable to Ewaso Lions, right, Shivani?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very much about relationships. It's about starting, it just takes a few people who can introduce you to others. And a bit like you, having a diversified way of getting funding, whether it's through the individual donors, whether it's through foundations, whether it's through zoos or through, corporates. I think it's so important just to have different sources of funding. And especially look at what's happening this year. The zoos are being hit so hard that there's absolutely no funding coming from them, understandably. So you've got to diversify to make sure that if one of your sources is really struggling, at least you do get money coming in from other sources. But yes, relationship building, I think, is so important to start getting those connections with people, staying in touch with them, and they become not just your donors, but they become your friends. I mean, I spend half my time just talking to people on WhatsApp, not because they're my donor and I think of them that way. I just love hanging out with them. And I think it's those relationships and connections that keep us going. It keeps this project going, and it keeps, you have faith that this person really has my back. And that's so important, especially at a time like now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. So do you want to, Hajara Zahid has just a really quick question, advice for someone aspiring to be a conservationist. Do you have a quick, one piece of advice that you'd want to share?
I think experience, I think going for it. A lot of people think conservation is hard to get into, and they sort of think, well, how do I break through? Do I need lots of degrees? Do I need to do that? You just got to go for it. If you've got the passion, you've got the drive, go for it. Don't let anything sort of stop you. Don't let anything distract you. Don't let anything discourage you. Absolutely go for it. If you've got that passion, you've got that excitement, you've got that interest for conservation, the doors are there. You've just got to knock on them. I mean, I had to knock on 1,000 doors, but eventually one opens, and you've just got to grab any opportunity that you're given. If someone gives you an opportunity, don't hesitate. Go for it.
Yeah. I fully echo what you're saying, Shivani. So I hope this is useful, Hajara Zahid. I would add to that, like, take any opportunity. So my start of my career, I wasn't born with a scuba tank on my back. When I finally got to a position where I could get involved in marine mammal research, I was actually brought on as a volunteer deckhand. So my first task was to clean toilets and polish brass. I didn't start off and this, with this aspirational job of being a science intern even.
Right.
So I think it's really like, but for me, I felt if I could get on that boat and I could clean polish the brass, clean the toilets, and then be like, hey, can I help? I knew that I could move forward. And that's sort of how I use that opportunity. So be innovative with the opportunities that come, use them, take them, but work hard as well. So don't assume the world's thinking about you and waiting to give you stuff. You got to work for it. You have to ask for it. You have to be dedicated, and you have to also reciprocate. So if someone gives you an opportunity, don't just take it and like do a half-hearted job. Do an absolutely phenomenal job. Something that you'll be more than proud of. Because that person will then be like, you know what? I had this intern. She did an amazing job, and I think I can do it to someone else. And that's how the doors open. So it's really up.
And also, just to add to that,
about every coastline needs a local hero.
I just want to add something to the same question. Don't be afraid to start your own thing. I mean, you've done it. I've done it. Lots of people have done it. It's so possible. And you can start with absolutely nothing. I had one table that my mom gave me. I had, a little bit of money for food. You can start with very little. And if you just really want this, you can get very far with your own project. So don't be afraid to start something yourself. So that was just really one thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, I totally agree. So Akaboy has a quick question about every coastline needs a local hero. I know he's heard me speak with the disparity in this space. It's a long list. You'll be happy to know that I'm actually curating a series of papers on this topic for a journal. So that, yeah, it'll be really exciting. We've got lots of different perspectives, you know, and I think because I have one perspective, there are people who've tried to do, you know, go into countries but also create capacity and have maybe struggled with that. So we're trying to see, you know, across the board what the perspectives are. What are some of the solutions? Well, I would say, first of all, you know, if you're going to a space, make sure you're not going in with your ideas and what you think is important. Listening is the most important tool. The people in that country, in that space, in that community will tell you what is necessary if you're listening. And then you have to go in with the humility and you know, the offer of wanting to help them to achieve the goals that they feel are important. So it's really about being a shadow support rather than trying to be the face of the project, and always be long-term invested. Don't go in and do the research and then run out and then publish all these papers and kind of sit in the glory of it. Because one thing is, you also have to remember that people from a lot of these nations, like even me, I can't go to another country freely and do research because I come from Sri Lanka. I have very big restrictions on my passport. But you come, you know, people who come from the US or UK or Europe have the freedom to come to our countries. And so, you know, also is like when you go into spaces, you know, using your privilege to take away other people's opportunities, and always be inclusive. And whoever you are working with, they should be your partners, and it shouldn't be hierarchical where you're commanding the project and telling people what to do. You guys are working on this together and you become a common voice. And the power of the project is if it can be translated into something good. And if you've invested in the capacity of that place, the returns will come to you a millionfold, because you will be part of a greater legacy on paper you'd publish if you went in as the parachute scientists, as I call them.
That's great.
So here's a question for you, Shivani. How much does trophy hunting affect lion populations?
So in Kenya, we have no trophy hunting. It stopped in the 70s. There are other countries in Southern Africa that have trophy hunting, but in Kenya, we don't. We focus on mainly photographic tourism. So it's not been an issue in Kenya for a very, very long time, since the early 70s. Sometime then is when trophy hunting was banned. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then maybe the Instagram is tired of my voice, Shivani. I don't know what's happening today.
I think it's the rain. I think it's the rain everywhere. Rain where you are, rain where I am.
And everybody's on the internet these days, remember? So we're battling with bandwidth also. So we got about 10 minutes. Yes. I'm really sorry I lost those questions, but if you guys want to quickly pop them here, Lanka My Blood, do you want to chuck your question here? Because I think someone wanted to hear the answer to that as well. Anybody else? We've got 10 minutes to answer some questions and then we'll wrap up. Really appreciate all your patience. You know, and coming back every time I got cut out, that's like 4 times. That's a lot of love from you guys, which is so appreciated. While Shivani and I are happy to talk to each other forever, it's also nice to have other people kind of interjecting. So yeah. Anybody want to quickly ask some questions, guys? I lost them all when
Asha,
I got thrown out.
I have one for you as you wait for others. What is one of your favorite moments you've had whilst you're working?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, so many. I mean, obviously seeing whale poop, that was like the highlight of my entire life. So that was cool. But also, just in an ocean related moment, when I was working on the Odyssey, which is the research vessel I started off on when I was polishing brass and cleaning toilets. I had this moment where we were out, you know, far offshore from Sri Lanka. It was pitch black, incredible. I mean, being out at sea, there's no better place to be to watch the stars at night. And there's this thing called bioluminescence, which are these tiny plankton in the water, which if you kind of move your hand in the water in certain places, it's like little lights go off. It's like fairy lights. It's phenomenal. And as we were cruising along black, one of the scientists, there's like dolphins. I mean, it's pitch black. How do you know what's out there, right? And I went out on the front of the boat, and I kid you not, Shivani, right? We're cruising, and these dolphins are going off in the front, and every time they swim through the water, this bioluminescence coats the animal, and because
wow.
so we're seeing like fairy lights in the shape of dolphins. I
Oh my
cannot tell
God.
you. Yeah, it was mind-blowing, and it's not even a story I'm making up. It is absolutely the truth. So thank you
That's
for that.
amazing.
So glad I
That's
got to share that.
amazing.
I'm gonna roll with the questions
This,
because we're gonna run out of time.
yeah.
But so we got the question back. Thank you, Lanka Blood. Lions feed on other living mammals. How do you manage to breed the other mammals to manage this balance? So how do you manage balance, I suppose, is really the question which is being asked.
I think actually the issue is there's not enough food for the lions, and the reason there's not enough food is there's not enough grass for food for lions. So what we're facing up in northern Kenya are rangelands that are very severely degraded. So as a result of climate change, as a result of overgrazing, frequent droughts, we're just not getting good enough pasture for for herbivores. But I think this is where we're really partners on the ground who do incredible work on rangeland restoration, bring back the grass.
Sorry, last round, I promise. As long as we have a proper goodbye. Oop, the dogs are here.
Sorry, I'm trying to stop her from barking.
That's okay. Sorry. Hi, Rosamira. Sorry, do you want to try answering that question one more time?
Okay. Okay, I'll keep it really short. Oh, if my dog would stop barking. Stop barking. Yuri. Okay. The rangelands up here in northern Kenya are very severely degraded as a result of droughts, as a result of overgrazing, as a result of climate change. So actually herbivores don't have enough grass. And because of that, the amount of wild prey available for lions is really, really low. But we're really lucky to have amazing partners like, for example, the Grevi Zebra Trust, who I mentioned earlier, who do amazing work on rangeland restoration. Bring back the grass. If we can bring back the grass, then there'll be more herbivores, more food for herbivores, and then at least there'll be a better balance. Because right now it's not very balanced. There's so little wild prey available for lions that's when they end up targeting livestock because it's easier and it's available. So bringing back the grass is such a key thing. I often say to people, lions need grass, and they laugh at me. They're like, what do you mean lions need grass? Have they suddenly become vegetarians? But no, their food needs grass. So it's such an important thing that we all have to be working on inclusively to improve the rangelands. So many great people are joining. Rosamira, hi. Lots of amazing people are joining. It's so great.
I will start talking until Ewaso Lions gets into the conversation. But the question was advice to my younger self. I would just say you will make it. That's really it. I would just say you will make it, because I think I held on, and you will make it. It will be hard sometimes, but the hard times will make the easy times or the better times easier, and they'll give you perspective, but you will make it. And that's what I will tell myself. Thank you for that question, Sashiko. Shivani, do you want to wrap up with like one piece of advice to your younger self, and then we'll have a closing goodbyes?
I think one piece of advice to my younger self: don't give up. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have terrible days. You're going to have days where you think, how on earth do I just keep going? Just don't give up. Just keep going, because there'll always, the blue skies will always emerge from the darkness, always. So you just keep thinking that way.
Yeah, so that's perfect, because that is well aligned with what I had said too, which is you will make it, despite the hard times and the good times. The hard times give us perspective for the good times. I mean, the good times give us perspective, but the hard times are really the teachers. So I think that's kind of the key thing. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. I am so sorry for this crazy internet situation. I am sure what's happening, but yeah, thank you. And thank you for logging back in. And Shivani, I really like your tent internet. I'd like your tent internet next time. Hopefully that'll help me. I don't know what's going on. But I'm really,
it did
thank you
work.
so much
I'm
for joining me
amazed.
today. Yeah, I know. And the dogs are well
Thank you,
behaved.
everyone.
Thank you.
I know. Well, I had to
Yes,
throw
thank
them
you.
out. They were barking too much. So they've run off now.
They're so cute though. But thank you for joining me in this conversation, Shivani. It's been really great. Thank you also for logging
It's been really
back
great.
in every time I got cut out. What I thought was really lovely is that we both work in different environments. We can come from different places across the Indian Ocean, but we both have very similar trajectories, life journeys, advice, thoughts, and I guess that's why we're friends as well, which is amazing. But it was nice to deep dive with you. My mom sends a message, Kwaheri Shivani.
I saw that. Kwaheri Fatma, very nice to hear from you.
But yeah, so thank you so much. And it's Earth Day, but I always say every day is Earth Day. What do you think, Shivani?
Definitely, every day should be Earth Day for everyone. It should be. So let's think of it that way, and let's act on it as if it is every day.
Yeah, exactly. And let's all act on it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
If it's everybody's Earth Day, then let's do it. Well, thank you so much once again.
Yeah,
Shivani, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks
Asha.
to all of you who came and joined in.